Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim Rambam, Hilchos Niskei Mama in Prakim Gimel, Dalid, and Hey. Before we begin, I would like to make a very important correction. When we mentioned yesterday that when it comes to damages, right, the whole idea of an oinus is not relevant. I said those words yesterday. I just want to clarify the following. If the person did the damage, indeed, like I gave the example, a person is driving a car, they get into an accident, completely not their fault. The brakes broke. They're going to tell the victim, I'm sorry, it was an accident. But they're equally chayiv to pay, just because it was mamash not your fault. But when my money damage, which is what we began this whole series with, my ox gored, memoinoi hizik, there we do make a difference between whether you are an oinus or whether you should have guarded your ox. And even though the Rambam began Perek Aleph by saying the reason why you're chayiv is because there is an element of shmira. In other words, it was expected of me to guard it, which is why Taka we say that if my animal damaged in an unusual way, then I can say Chvinatam. Now, I'm not going to be completely off the hook, but their negligence versus it was completely beyond my control will make all of the difference in the world. Good. Now, we're beginning today's first chapter is Perek Gimel. But the first thing that Rambam is going to set out is that even though when we spoke about a person whose animal damaged, very important, Perek Aleph, Halacha Ches, differentiated whether my animal damaged b'reshus hanizak, that is where we spoke about them, chayiv to pay, chatzi nezek, nezek shalom. If my animal did something that my animal normally does, for which if it would happen b'reshus hanizak, I would be chayiv to pay right away, nezek shalom. If it happened b'reshus harabim, for example, both of us had permission to be there, meaning me, I had the right to go there with my animal. You have the right to go into the reshus harabim with your animal. And my animal did a damage because it did what it normally does. That Rambam Paskins, I'm completely exempt, which makes sense because I should have guarded my animal. You should have guarded your stuff, knowing that we are in a place where everyone has the right to go there with their animals. That Rambam will lay out, or you saw it in this chapter. Hold on. That I am potted if we're speaking about damages. But if my animal ate up your food, for example, even b'reshus harabim where I'm not chayiv to pay for the hezek, but I have benefit. Now that my animal had lunch, your food for my animal's lunch, against your will, I don't have to feed my animal again. Now, I won't necessarily have to pay all of the value of what it ate, but there is a certain amount of benefit for which I'm chayiv to pay because I had hana. That would be a big yisoid in Perek Gimel. We're going to have many other applications concerning this difference that we quoted from Perek Aleph Halacha Ches, that when my animal did a damage in the usual way, b'reshus hanizek, I'm right away chayiv to pay nezek shalom, and b'reshus harabim, I'm completely potted, as we will see in this chapter. Perek Gimel has 15 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph Zok Rambam. Habehema mu'edes lechol peiros oyerokos v'chayotza b'hem. I mentioned some people, you put food in front of them, they're going to eat it because the behema, that's the nature of a behema. You have food. I'm not, God forbid, insulting anyone. We all have a behema. Okay. Lefikach im nichnas al reshus hanizak and v'achlu dvarim shedarka lo achlam. We never say first few times chatzi nezek. No. Nishalem nezek shalem. And indeed, shenemar ubiyad b'stei acher, then right away, meitav sadeh or meitav karma yishalem. And like we learned again in Perek Aleph Halacha Ches, if my animal, while I was walking with it in the reshus harabim, walked by you and your stuff, and it ate your stuff, then I'm potted, but let's clarify, I'm potted for the fact that I caused you to lose your food. Which is the case generally. My animal ate, there is benefit. I don't have to feed my animal lunch anymore. Now, mishalem mashenenes, I have to pay for that which I had hana from, even though it won't be the same dollar amount of what it damaged. For example, halacha beis, huh? The Rambam is going to write in a moment. Nichnas l'reshus hanizik, and it ate up in your reshus shumshumim, your sesame seeds, your loit. Why the Rambam mentions these things? Who knows? The Mishnah probably mentions them. Why does the Rabbeinu HaKadosh pick this? I don't know. Your chestnuts, the chayoytze behem b'shava dinar. Since it's b'reshus hanizak, I gotta pay for the damage. Yeah, hana, not hana. I pay for the damage, which is I pay the complete value of the food that it consumed, the market value. But even though for the fact that my animal destroyed their property by eating it, for that part, I'm completely potter. But my animal had hana, which means I, the owner, have hana. So royin oisa ki ilu heim so'oiren no'yamet. There's two cheshbonis that you make. Quantity. Now, it ate food that you pay in Glattmart, was $50 for a couple of ounces. That cheshbon, first of all, you change the product. Let's say I'm not going to feed my animal sesame seeds. I'm going to feed my animal barley. I'm going to feed my animal other very inexpensive animal food. So step number one is make believe it was that. Number two, right? So I pay him ki'ilam so'oidem oyamet umeshalim the may amet or the may so'oidem bizoil. I remember this from the Gemara. May so'oidem bizoil means even, first of all, you make it into the cheapest animal food. I can claim I would have to feed him lunch. I would not give my animal sesame seeds. Now I don't have to give. So now I saved myself not having to buy barley. Barley itself, I know that barley has a general market value, but even general market values, things fluctuate. I have the right to claim that I know where to buy this cheap. I would have bought the cheapest type. Even in So'idim, the May So'idim Bezol, if you remember, it's 2/3 of the common market value. Because when things are, when someone has an extra stock, or when there's a lot of produce, maybe right now there's not a lot of produce, but I would have bought it 2 seasons ago when there was a lot. The most that I can claim I would have gotten away with is paying only 2/3, but not less than that. That's called the May So'idim Bezol. So listen, I end up paying very little money. But if my animal ate up a steak, it's still a big difference. You understand? I pay mashenehenes, that in So'idim and the May So'idim Bezol. There you go. That's the cheshbon. Halacha yim. Ochla, ochlin, haroyin law. Now, I pay because I had hana. What happens if my animal ate foods that actually is damaging for it? A lot of sugar. I don't know what's damaging for an animal. You're going, the example is chitin. Chitin God made for men, for human beings. Then takam pater. Now, again, if it ate it with a shus hanizak, you don't make a cheshbon of hana, you make a cheshbon of masha hizik. The moment I'm exempt from the hezek, now that's pay the gimel. Did my animal have hana? You have to pay for the hana. What happens if it ate something that it normally would never eat? Like it ate up someone else's garments. It ate up other people's kalim. And here again, that's why I gave my just clarification, correction, that we make a difference. If my animal damaged, oinus, pshia, yeah, that I even dream that my animal was going to eat up your shoes, for me to be chayiv to guard it. I never even thought it's going to do it. So since it is something unusual, so it's amazing. But if my animal did something, makes sense. I'm completely potter. Because I have the right to go with a shusarabim. Once my animal did something that shaloi kedarkoi, the victim is more a victim. The victim says, yeah, I was going to guard my food, but I never knew I need to guard my shoes. So I have to pay chatzi nezik. The derech, now here the point is that it ate it up. Doesn't matter. It's ein darkei bekach. The derech, b'nei adam laniach keleim ksusam reshusarabim at sheyenuchu ma'at. So it follows this rule. Halacha daled. The feet of my animal is b'reshus hanizak. And the animal didn't move. It picked it up b'reshus harabim, moved its mouth into the reshus hanizak, and it ate it over there. How great is that? So there's a safek. Do you look at the place of the akira? Sounds like Hilchos Shabbos. Makim Akira, by food, B'Reshus Harabim means that I, the owner, would be exempt. Let's speak about the hezek, complete. Or do I look at the, now, out from the hezek, and if I had hana, only the hana, which is what we're learning in this chapter. Or do I have to pay for the nezek because it aided B'Reshus Hanizak? And we already had this introduced to us yesterday. Whenever there is a doubt, when it comes to money, we will generally apply the rule of Amaitze Mechabeirei, all of a lie, both ways. So prior to the nizak getting the money out of me, the lesser amount, the din of pay the gimel, not the din of pay the kal. But if the nizak chap the money from me, then and he can claim that it should follow the din of it aided b'reshus hanizak chayiv to pay for the damage, which is a lot more in many cases than only mashana henes when you translate it into so'idim or amid and then the mei so'idim b'zah. Halacha hey. Kelav shenichnas l'chatzir v'notal pasui basar. So here the animal moved. Case number 4, halacha dalad, was the animal was kavua. The mouth went from the Reshus Harabim into the Reshus Hanizak. Here, the dog went into the Achatz, Reshus Hanizak, right? And it took bread and it took basar. And the whole dog with the food marched into the Reshus Harabim or to another domain. And it ate it over there. So here we say, Ma shenehene mishalem. In other words, here we go after the Makayim ha'achila. Achlam basada shel bal ha'chatzer. It took it out of the chatzar of the nizak, and it walked into the sada of the nizak. So here, Mishalom Nezek Shalom, Ki'ilo Achalom Atecha Chatzar. Doesn't make, what difference does it make that it changed domains if it all is not to the Reshus Harabim, it all belongs to the same nizak. Sharei b'Reshus HaNizak Achal v'chein chol kayoytze bozer. Halacha Vav. V'heimam sha'achala acholin she'in darkon la'achlon. Abol, it does eat it, al yidei atchak. So we had halacha aleph and base. Then we had halacha gimel, right? If it ate something, my friends, that is shaloi kedarkoi, it's amazing. Bein b'Reshus HaNizak, bein b'Reshus Harabim, right? I pay chatzi nezek. Okay, what happens? How do you define that? Maybe it ate something al yidei atchak. Like, for example, a pada ate so'irim. What do I know about animals? That's the way the Torah wants us to know about everything. But how? From the Torah. So now you know that a pada eats so'irim al yidei atchak. Has to be very hungry. Or the chamoid ate karshinim, or dogim. Or a chazid ate chatichas basar. Or a kelev shalakak es hashemen. And we know that we already learned so many times how a kelev, from all of the creatures, the food chain, the natural food chain, is the most limited. So l'mashal on Shabbos, I can only feed my animals. I cannot feed your animals. A kelev I can feed. Hashem made it that the kelev digests the food over 72 hours. Tuma balua, we learned those dinim over there in Sefer Tara. But it ate oil, nebach. Or a chatul, a ketzela, ate the tamarim. All the al de atchak. V'chein chal chayitza be'elu. Paskins the Rambam, imachal b'Reshus HaNizak, mishalem nezek sholem. In other words, it has a din of shein, right? Even though it's al de atchak, and b'Reshus Harabim pater, because it's still food. It's not ksus. It's not the others, the kalim. And then, like we began this chapter, even when you are pater b'Reshus Harabim, because we always say it's darkoi to eat. Never, so you're pater, but in the hennes, mishalem ashen hennes, right? The meisa oirim bezor. Halacha zayin. Now we're going from a behema to a chaya. But the nefesh Bahamas is growing over here. A chaya, vilde chaya. Shenichnas l'Reshus HaNizak. And what did it do over there? B'tarf of achla behema. It didn't eat the dates. No, it ate up your behema, or it ate up basar. Mishalem nezek sholem shezeh hu darka. You know why? That's why it's called a chaya. Abol kelev she'achol kavasim kitanim. We're putting the limit. Eichasul she'achol tarnagoyim gedoylim. That's already called a shinoi. Whenever it's a shinoi, then you mishalem chatzi nezek. And by the way, to make it clear, if it's a shinoi, and even if it was with a Reshus Harabim, it's also Mashalom Chatzi Nezek. Halacha Ches. Sal sheyesh boy lechem. And the nichnas chamoy, the shibar asal, it broke the basket to eat the bread. So how does it work? So my friends, this is called kednarke. When there's food in a keli and an animal is hungry, it's just natural for the animal to be a mazik. So we say, Mishalim al asal va'al alechem nezik shalom. It happened with Rishus HaNizik. Shezehu darkei. That sees a lefes, and the lefes is on top, the turnip is on top of a chavis. These goats, they krich everywhere. I don't know if you noticed that. It's amazing. Mountain goats, they go climb on big goats on a little tree. So it's natural for it to climb on top of the chavis. V'nestabech b'chavis, and it stumbles over the jug and therefore damaged the jug to eat the lefes. And it broke the jug. Mishalom al shneim nezik shalom. Kishem shedarkei lechol kach darkei litolis bekelim v'la alis k'dei lechol. V'chein kol chayotze b'zeh. Avol in nichnas chamor, and it ate up the bread. And then, not to get to the bread, it broke the basket. Then it broke the basket, and it ate up the basket. Right? That's already something unusual. Al alechem mishalom nezik shalom, and ba'al hasal yepechatzi nezik. Why? Because it's a shinoi. V'chein kol chayotze b'zeh. And again, remember, the moment something happened to Shinoi, then we won't make a difference between the Rishus Harabim and the Rishus Hayach.
All these cases where we say full damages, it's a replacement of the weaker, of the cheaper food item, like we said before.
No. Nezek Shalom, very good. Nezek, the unique about the replacement is only when you're paying for Hana'ah, so you can counterclaim, I never would have fed something so expensive. Hezek is what you damage, but still, the Rambam already was maramis. We're going to have a whole pedic about it. Is that the perpetrator doesn't have to really take the nevela and substitute it all? Like the examples when the Rambam gave was, means if my animal damaged your animal, you don't say, well, it was worth 20, and now what? Now even the carcass has some value, and I only have to pay for the difference in between what it was and the remains.
So eating bread, why would you say, oh, maybe?
No. Because the moment you have to pay for the hezek, we don't say that. I only make that cheshbon when I have to pay for. If I'm potter to pay for the hezek, so now you have to pay mashen hendes. That's the word to pay the gimel. But halachetes behema she'achlam atoich harachavam. It's eating in the marketplace. Bein derech halichasam. Bein amda va'achlam. Mishalam mashen hendes. Like we began, because you, the victim, cannot claim that you're a victim. How are you a victim? Let's blame the victim. You knew that animals are there. You should have protected your food. And now we already learned that. What is the Rambam adding? If you remember in Hilchos Shabbos, there's something called Sidei HaRachava. Sidei HaRachava, you can argue is maybe a sidewalk, but it's really more than a sidewalk. There's certain Sidei Rishus Harabim that concerning Hilchos Shabbos, sometimes they have a din of a Rishus HaYachid, meaning of a Carmelist, not of a Rishus Harabim. Does it change? Now, even if the animal chazra means the animal is walking where everyone has the right to walk, it turned its head in the corner. But if the behemoth itself, the feet of the behemoth, completely left where everyone walks, and it went then he not mashanehenis. Because the sides of the Rishus Harabim is considered, like we learn in Hilchos Shabbos. Again, I'm not going to use the words Rishus HaYachid because there we had that whole thing of a Carmelist. But midin Torah, it has a din of a Rishus HaYachid. It's amazing. And therefore, the owner is more guilty for not guarding his animal from damaging, and he's chayv to pay for the full damage. Achla, the same concept. Achla mi pesa achanus. Mishalam ashenanis. Why is that? Because the owner of the store knows whatever he puts in the door, he knows everyone is walking by there. Like, on whom is the achrayus to guard it? On the owner of the store. Now, the moment my animal stuck its head inside the store, the owner of the store was rightfully expecting for people to make sure that their animals don't go in the store. But whenever I'm responsible because there was a certain amount of shemirah that was demanded on me, I'm going to be chayv to pay. Whenever we say that the responsibility was beikid on the owner of the property to make sure it doesn't get damaged, Aleph, I'm potter. If my animal did something usual. Number two, again, pay the gimel. If my animal had hana, then to a certain degree, I have to pay mashenehens. Halacha yud. What's the din now that we introduced Sidei Rishus Harabim? Okay, let me ask you something, guys. What you remember? What's the din of the top of another animal? The top of another animal is not considered Rishus Harabim concerning many dinim. So here we're going to differentiate whether my animal ate off your animal's back or whether my animal put its forelegs on top of your animal. So it's mamish on your animal and then it ate. So if it just ate from the top of your animal, even afilu amda, only mishalam mashinahenis. In other words, we apply the din that it is still considered the Rishus Harabim. Means I don't pay for the hezek. If anything, I only pay mashinahenis. So the one who's claiming to be a victim is not the victim. You should have protected your property. But if my animal did something unusual, which is a jump means that it jumped on top of your animal and it ate while it was leaning on your animal, then it's considered for my animal to have entered your domain. The back of the chaverta is kachatzar hanizik uchashuv. Beautiful. Halacha Yudal. If an animal slips, and when it slipped, it falls into a gina, it falls into your garden. And when it fell in there, it beat down on. Right now, your vegetables, my friends, gave me hana'ah. What was my hana'ah? That it didn't get banged on cement. Yechap, oisha, or it ate it up. Now hold on, Danny. My animal did damage b'reshus hanizak. Why don't I have to pay for the hezek? Because its entry to the Rishus HaNizak was ba'oinus. So I'm going to go back to the intro. We make a big difference. Afilu halchem aruga laruga. Now you have another chiddush. Other chiddush is that, okay, the first clap was ba'oinus. My animal slipped. But my animal is a smart animal. So my animal gets up in the Rishus HaNizak. You know what it notices? I'm a chaya. It's in Gan Eden. Now it begins to walk around over there and to do more damage. Since now this is called chilasa ba'oinus v'soifer b'pshia, I'm not responsible for my animals entering your rishus because it slipped. So I only will have to pay mashinahenis. Afilu nish'ara sham koli em kuli, and it did damage there. Eina b'shalom el mashinahenis. Now, omahana yesh lo b'chavita, of course. Shari matzah markim nach v'loy nisrasko evorel. That's called hana. Now, again, what does hana mean, guys? I want to say, I don't know if you pay the meisa oidem bezoil. There's another cheshbon. The point is that if my animal fell on very expensive produce, if my hana is because it was soft, and you make the same concept. If it wouldn't have been this expensive food, if it only would have been grass, something else, that would have gotten ruined. There's also another cheshbon you have to make. But whatever hana, some hana I have to pay for. But if my animal went in there normally, okay, because that's the rule, my friends. If my animal did damage, I got to pay for all the damage that it did. If my animal went into your reshus, guys, wrongfully, not ba'oinus, while it was there, my animal gave birth. That's an oinus. And while it gave birth, that process, it soiled your produce. I cannot claim oinus. Tchilasa b'pshia. If it was pushed by another animal and it fell, one second, my animal was pushed. It was pushed by one of my other animals. I should have made sure that one animal of mine doesn't push another animal of mine. Because so that's still considered tchilasa b'pshia, and once tchilasa b'pshia, I pay ma shehizika, and I don't get away to pay only ma shenehenes. Halacha yud beis. My animal slipped in the floor and it fell, and now it left. It left, and now it returned. Even though the owner of the animal did not want for it to return. Now, let's just give the oisius that we're going to learn, God willing, today. I think in the next chapter, called Shmira, Shmira Mu'ula, Shmira Shechusam. That means that I showed I don't want my animal to return. I locked the door, but it was not good enough. That must be the case, because you'll learn if I mamish did everything I need to do to protect, and then my animal broke out, oinus, right back to the oinus thing, which we make a difference. But I showed I don't want, but I didn't do it properly. Mishala masha izikum. Which even though when it slipped in there, that's called it entered bo'oinus. If it's bo'oinus, max masha nehenes. Here, the fact that it returned, that was my fault. I should have done what we call a shmira mu'ula. We're going to learn, God willing, today more details about that. Because there's a rule, guys. The rule is, once a behemoth sins, the behemoth is going to want to do the same sin again. This is the whole thing is a Musar Sefer, guys. It's all about our Nefesh Habahamis. Everything fits a lot better. We can identify with it. Not you, me. Shadava Yodua, Shekivan Sheyoda Derech Hagina. Once the animal learned that way of going into that place and to eat up someone else's food, Harehi Chozeres Ma'elel. That's it, Chavre. It's one the end of once man eingefallen, only the Rebbe can keep us out of it. You have to have a Shmira Mu'ula to be protected. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hakadon. A potter. You can even say this is like a new topic now. So I bring my stuff into your reshus. Your behema, your animal broke it. Reshus hamazik. Potter. I know pshita. We're building up to something. So that's not avad. You're kidding? Imagine I bring something into your reshus. That's America. I go into your store and I slip and I sue you. Mamash Sudoim, worse than Sudoim. In Sudoim, they didn't have that that geneva, that evil. Yeah, in other words, if I got damaged in your property, you're potted. But 1 second. I'll tell you more than that. More than that is, I brought my pots into your property and your animals got hurt by my pots. My kalim broke. First of all, you're potter. What happens if during that process you got damaged, your animal got damaged? I'm going to be chayiv. Beautiful. That's the way the M is. That's the way it should be. Then, guys, then potter. Potter means if I brought my stuff into your property and your animal got damaged from my stuff, I won't be chayiv. Because I have rishus. Now, next step, the highest step. Shoimrim. We're going to get more of that again, God willing, today in the later chapters. I brought my pots in there because I'm going on a trip. Do me a favor. Can you watch over me? You were my shoimer. Everything changes. Then, if your animals damaged my pots, that's the din of a shoimer. Balabay is chayiv. Now you have to remember, guys, that Rambam is not going into all of the din of a shoymim. The emes is just say the words. But you're chayiv on pshia. You have to know what level of shoymim. So the Rambam is not contradicting that. Okay, he just wants to point out these three phases. Yes, Yakir. Okay, Allah Yudal. And let's go a few steps. If the acholtem behem to shabalabay is potter. You can say, and you know what the chiddush is? Not chayiv to pay masha nehenes. He doesn't even have to pay masha nehenes because I brought it into your reshus. And if the owner's animal tripped on my food that I brought you reshus, I gotta pay for the damage. And here again, the imhichnes b'reshus pater. And now the imhichnes balabayis lishmeres hapein v'kibel balabayis. Then you took upon yourself to guard it. Balabais is chayv. He ate it up and he got hurt from eating it. That's the only time where the balapetus will be potter. Everything. Epis, you have to blame the victim by us. Always. You have to hulk up on this. I'm saying this just funny. Because in other words, the owner, the balabal hachotzer, when you have an animal in your chotzer, it's not stam hefkerveld. You can just let your animal do whatever you want. It's your animals. You have to make sure that your animals don't get hurt. Now, I brought in stuff. shaloi b'reshus, there is a certain, at some point, you should have noticed that your animal is eating up too much food, let's say, it's overeating, and you should have stopped the animal. And in other words, you brought in your stuff with reshus. Let's say I'm the balachatzer. The balachatzer told the Baal HaPedes, you guard it. That was the agreement. You can bring it into my property, but you have to guard it. And same thing. Once you undertook to guard it, not only am I not chayiv if you lost it, but if your produce damaged my animal, even if my animal overate, here I can claim, no, you were supposed to guard it. And this is like almost like, where do you draw the line down? In the beginning of Allah Yud, we don't say that. We say that if my animal overate, at some point the Baal HaChatzer should have stopped his animals. But since the Baal HaPeiros took achrayis, the Baal HaChatzer says, I was not here the whole time. And indeed, I'm Maisa Shohaya, Maisa Be'isha. And this is a very important part of that story, because when a woman is cooking or baking, sometimes she does, her sleeves go up, she doesn't look that modest. So the Baal Habayis, healthy person, will walk out. Once it's not expected for the Baal Habayis to be the Shomer, even though it was never verbalized. No, she went and imagine, Rachel and Leah. Rachel goes into Leah's house. Rachel begins to bake. Leah removed herself, but there's a reason, because she didn't want to be there when Rachel was not that modest. Now Rachel has bigger achrayos. In a sound, for tznius reasons, at that moment it's self-understood that the guest is chayiv to be the shomer, and now came an A's of the balabayis, and it ate up the dough, and the A's died. So we expect the balapedis to be the shomer. Even though we said in the beginning of Yudalit, sometimes you don't do that. Here we did that, because the reason why the balabais left was to give space to the guest, to the balapedis. It's like Kibbutz. That's the word. A final chapter tezvav, a final halach. I mean, I make a grainy in someone else's field. Shaloi b'reshus. Same things. The owner, pater, guys, appreciate this. You know what pater means? Not only pater from damage, guys, pater even from mashenehenes. Because you're kidding? You brought it into his property. Balapeiros is chayiv. He had no permission. The only leniency will be is if the owner of the Sada's animal ate up the grain that was there, Shaloi B'Reshus, he overate. At least for that, he'll be pater, because we do expect you own the animals. You cannot neglect your animals in your yard. But if you make this B'Reshus, then, first of all, the Baal Hasad is chayiv. Even though the Baal Hasad never took responsibility, Lishmar. Why? It's different. Because Shahashem Begranois, Kivin Shamalai Hagdish Bekan, Kemi Shamalai Hagdesh Baniyash Malachu Chasho. Similar to the previous halakha, the story with the woman. So sometimes by default, that's that scenario. Al pi halacha, you become the shayman. Beautiful. Moving on to Perek Dalet. Now here we go. We're going to learn about Shmira Ra'oi versus Shmira Shaloi Karo, how it will make a difference. B'chlal, we're going to learn that a shomer is responsible like the owner. We're going to have nuance to that. Big rule. Whatever the rules are, we learned at least some klalim. My animal was mazik, b'reshus hanizik, b'reshus here. I'm chayiv. If I gave you my animal to be a shomer, and then the animal did damage, makes sense. Even more, status knech. The whole machloek is why are you chayiv to pay? Because memoyno hizik or because sholei shama. The Rambam began because memoyno hizik. But even that sad, still there is an element of, did you do shmira? And are you an oines? So a shomer is in the place of the owner. That's the rule. Now, what's going to happen? one of the four shoymim is a borrower and a lender. And it's important to know some of the details we'll have today. If I have an animal and I lend it to you, now what happens if my animal was really a muad, but I didn't notify you my animal was a muad? You're in the place of the owner, but you don't know where we're up to. Other dinim, there's a concept that animals are affected by their owners. And we're going to see a gavaldik halacha that when my animal is under your care, if it became a muad, when you return it back to me, it goes back to being a tam. You know, we say that why did Hashem punish the animals, the doir hamabul, right? So they were misbehaving sexually. They're behemoths. No. They were copying the choices of their owners. And when Hashem was going to wash out that sin from the world, it included the animals. You know, the goyim, they prove that, I don't mean to say goyim in a negative way. I mean to say that you see homosexuality in the animal kingdom. Of course you do, because people are making that choice, which is against the will of God. So nature mirrors human choice. Not see, it's natural. Ferdein, the opposite. You made it natural. Oh, so therefore the owner affects the midah of their animals. So the owner will see, he says, no, when you were the shoyel, it was connected to you. Du bist a mazik, so the animal became a mazik. Ich bin like big tzaddik. Now that the animal came back to my domain, and taka the chamoy of Pinchas ben Yair, we find that in Chazal. Big tzaddikim, their animals were tzaddikim. And halach is not al pi Kabbalah in Nigla. These are phenomenal dinim over here. And also one final big topic of this chapter will be is when my animal eats up unfinished crop that's connected to the ground. How do you make a cheshbon? It's another whole mathematical shaila. In other words, if produce is produce, market value, and I know we spoke out in the last chapter, the Mesa item, the Zoil, normally there's a market value. Going to the market, how much per pound? When my produce is still connected to my field and it's in the middle of growing, how do you put a number to that? It's a good question. It will become ready, it will be worth, but it never got there. And you still have to harvest it. So there's a Chazal gave us a way of cheshboning the value of the produce. Pedig Dalet has 14 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. This is so exciting, Chevin. Good. First topic is Shmira. So yes, we do differentiate whether you're an oinus or whether you're a pesheya. The guy says, what are you talking about? I guarded it. So let's speak about levels of Shmira. I have a behemalach, and I have a corral, and I've been all b'fnei b'del she'echayel la'amel b'ruach mitzuya. Get used to these words. If under the halach yelech norm, the doors would have remained locked. If my animal went and it did damage, guys, it doesn't matter where it did damage. Could have done damage with a Reshus HaNizak. We already had this din. If it slipped into the Reshus HaNizak, now we're going more. In other words, once the Torah will determine the owner did Shmira Kira'ui, then he's taka exempt. I'm a Moino Yizik. There's always the element of Shaloi Shama. Here he says, I did Shmira. What should I do? I didn't do damage. My animal did damage. I did everything the norm. Even though I locked the door, so I showed something. And the door was fantastic. The vent, were worth garnished. That's Hadel and the same Karom. And once it's called a Shmira Chusa, it's Shvacha Shmira. So then I have to pay Chayiv. Now, what Chayiv? When Chayiv, go back to pay the Kalif, go back to the Yisoids. What happens if my animal didn't break the door down, didn't break the walls down, it dug under the fence? Now, let me, Dovi, if I would have had the best fence in the world, it still would have dug under the fence. But it did something that it could not have prevented it. Or, Vafil, and if it's a Mechitza Balayla, by the way, Mechitza Balayla, remember that, Sugya? Mechitza Bayoim, it's not called an oinus. If it broke the wall down and it happened at night, then that's when you say the owner's an oinus. Or if Ganavim broke it down, then Baal Hatzoin Chayev. Here we go. Let's read footnote 1. 1 second. Why? Even though the damage is considered to have been caused by an oinus, since the damage was preceded by an act of negligence, how great is that? Once I did a Shmira Pchusa, the door wasn't properly locked. My animal didn't go through the door. The walls collapsed. They dug under. Ganav broke in. That means what happened, even if I would have done a Shmira Mu'ula, the animals would have gotten out. Bottom line is, I did not do a Shmira Mu'ula. This is so important. So therefore,
on the fact that the door is not closed.
If I didn't make a Shmira Kara'oi, even though, but just like we learned in the third time from the beginning, that Chilasai B'Pshia B'Soifa B'Ainis. That's in that category. Pshia and Ainis will make a big difference when it's only my property that damaged. But we go out to the beginning. And now v'nifritza balayla, again balayla. By Yom, there's still expectations for me to know. That's the way the rules. But balayla, oisha pratzol listim, and now v'yoslik takaptura. You get it? More than that, if the listim, now guys, we also learned that gram nezik is pater b'dinei adam. So there's a difference between the listim breaking the door down. At least I'm pater. I did shmira mu'ula. But will the listim be chayiv? No, but if the listim removed the animals and they did damage, then the listim are chayav. If they removed it, if they only broke the door down, we're just touching on direct, indirect. Okay, halacha beis. Hapoyretz, get it. This is very good. Hapoyretz got to lift maybe behemas chaveiroi. The yotza v'hizikon. Im hoya gader chazaku bari. Then, who did the act? Who did the act? Not the owner, the guy who broke it down. Chayo. It's interesting what we say over here. So I was played it together, like we learned before, Danny, with the listing, but I didn't take it out. I just broke together down. Then Patim and then the other Shamayim. Now I just want to say like this: that if the what did we just learn, Danny? Who's chayiv to pay? Who's chayiv to pay? The koisel was Ru'ua. The owner of the animal is chayiv to pay. Yeah. The question here is whether I'm chayiv to pay to him. That's what it means over here. That's called gram hezek. I caused the owner to have to pay. Now, the owner had to pay Danny because the koisel was Ru'ua. But don't forget, the animal did not leave because the animal broke through the koisel Ru'ua. The animal left because I was plated together. This is just to remember this concept of I didn't put it in its mouth. I put it in front. What did we learn also in last chapter? We learned in last chapter that even in your domain, you have to wash your animals. They shouldn't overeat or eat hezek. But I caused them to die. So this concept of gram hezek is part of the Adam. Gram
hezek, you didn't actually feed it to the animal, you just put it.
Bidiyuk. Let's get moving. Halacha gimel. I take your animal and I bring them to a come of someone else. You know, the three people involved: the owner of the animal, the guy that brought the animal to Levi's come up. So I guess Hamami, the guy that put the animal chayiv, l'shalom masha hizika, not masha nehenes, masha hizika. You know why? If I put an animal on top of food, I'm a mazik b'yodayim. Chayne mikisha achahol chalukamas chaveri b'yizika. Even if I beat it to get there, zehi kisha chayiv. That's called mazik b'yodayim. Halacha daled. Hamoyse behem toy l'shemer chinam. Here we go. Shomerim. If I give my animal to a shemer chinam or to a noisa sachar or to a sechar or to a shoyol, as a rule, we begin with the premise that during that time, whether you're the shomer or whether you are the renter, whether you are the borrower, you are in the place of the owners. The imizika, who's chayiv? The shomer is chayiv. Whenever the owner is chayiv. Bisman shaloi shemaru klal. Avolim shemaru shmira mu'ula kara'oi. Shmila mu'ula kara'oi. You know when you say these words, it sounds like doesn't it sound like double? The Rambam only spoke about shmila ru'uya. Shmila mu'ula kara'oi means that it's a delis, guys. Sheyachoylo la'amoid afilu beruach she'einu matzuya. Super duper shmira. The yotza v'zika. Guys, the shoymenim are peturim v'haba'olam chayavim. Wow. Let's read footnote 2. Look, like, what's the logic? The wording of this halacha has raised questions. The obvious difficulty. The watchman guarded the animal in an excellent manner. Why is the owner liable? The Magen Mishnah explains that liability refers only when the animal did something which is unusual, which is goring. And goring is something for which, right, you're not even expected to guard from, which is why you're chayiv only to pay chatzi nezek. Kesef Mishnah refers to a responsa that they say was written by the Rambam, in which he states that it becomes clear it's a plinting error. Let's go with the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef Mishnah rewords the way, now I know I'm learning the Chayenu, other people might have other Rambams that Lechatchila quoted the Girs of the Kesef Mishnah. So at least they're going to read him what's his Girs of. If, however, they guarded the animal in an excellent manner, as they should, and it got loose and causing damage, the watchman is not liable. Nukuda, you know what the Rambam is really saying? The watchman is not liable, and the owner is not liable. That's the way the Kesef Mishnah understands. Then, now I'm reading in the English, but we're going to read it soon inside. If the watchman guarded the animal in an inferior manner, now hold on. That's what you were jumping before, Yakir. If I guarded it, shmira pechusa, but I'm only a shomer china, you can't say it was pshia. So the shomer will be exempt. Why? Because the shomer has a very low level of achrais because he's not getting paid. The owner then has to pay. That fits. But no, the shomer is in the place of the owner, but you can't change shulcha shomer, a shomer chinam, unless they were poisheya, even for Geneva and Aveda that they could have prevented, they're not chayiv. So a shmira pechusa, the shomer, that's where the owner is chayiv. He's not liable because if he's an unpaid watchman, but then the owner is liable. And even if the animal kills a human being, we put, make it clear, guys, but they don't learn that yet. Even though the Torah uses the words that if it happened a few times and an animal killed someone, that Baal Hashar Yumas, but then the Torah says, Koifer Yushas Olav, the Nasan, right? He gives the money, Machloikes, Rabbi Shmuel, and the Chachamim, the Meyamazik, the Meynizek, even in those serious halachas. Let's go back inside. Shomru Shmira Pchusa, Im Shomer Chinmul Pater, and the guys, it is over here that the Kesef Mishnah says, and the Rambam writes, V'habalam Chayavim. Because if I would be the owner, Pedek Dalet begins telling me that a shmira that is not even oimed b'fnei ruach mitzuya is not called a shmira. For the shomer it is. So when the shomer is exempt, there the owner has to pay. Masuk midvash. The im shomer shaylo, then they're chayiv because it's expected. You're getting paid. You should make a shmira keroi, not a shmira pchus. Halachei. If owner leaves a behemoth in the sun. And guys, I had the best fence in the world. You leave an animal in the sun, it cannot take the sun. A behemoth versteht that Miami is Gehenna, even a behemoth. It has to leave. So it dug under and it left. You're chayiv. You put a good luck. Because LA. And it's Yisrael, the Iker. If not, L.A., halacha vav. Masar behemte l'chei shoyte v'katan. Afa b'yishar yashar kashur. Gavaldik, same concept. David, these are so beautiful halachas. Guys, I want you to know this. The Gemara says that part of one of the shtusim of a chei shoyte v'katan is that even when a behemoth is properly guarded, it's tied up. They like undoing the knot. So no, you gave the animal when it was under a shmira pa'amula. You gave it to the care of a cheder shayt. That's your pshia. That everything is b'yetzer hara. What's the pshat? I heard it from the Rebbe, but the Rebbe was quoting classic is that some people's yetzer hara don't even have a title. That we bring ourselves to a new yetzer hara. We give ourselves an aya yetzer hara.
Just like the behemoth we were talking about.
It's all the same. It's all this.
Meaning not that the
Yeah, okay. I took two steps. I jumped ahead. First of all, a knot for a shirt is b'chlal not good. Now, even if it was Shemur Mishmira Ma'ula, I'm sorry, Danny, next piece. So first of all, b'chlal, a knot for a shirt is like you have to continuously be there. Even if you locked up the shirt in a way that if with any human intervention, the shirt would have been stuck there, and the shirt that's called chilase bepsia v'seifel oinas, Danny, because a ched is straight to the cut, and they undo that. You leave.
is
leaving the
ox with the cut.
Even b'shmira me'ula. They leave your apartment in the care of a cheder shaita v'kat, and everything is nice and neat. What will be when you come back? Okay, halacha zayin.
Or teenagers also.
My shver, he should have a refuah shleima. He always has this word that one of his neighbors, they wanted to rent an apartment in Flatbush. He didn't want to have a lot of kids. So he always was going to look to see how many from a Yidden, their families. And he asked the person, how many kids do you have? 5 kids. Oh, 5 kids, that's okay. It's a small family. They move and I'm moving, they 10 kids. 10 kids, he says, you told me there's 5 kids. No, the guy says 5 are kids, the other 5 are chayes. So they tell us, they're not even kids. Halacha zayin. K'masar shoyroi l'chamisha. If you gave over your shore to 5 people, and one of them was Poisheya, and V'yotza v'hizik, I know it's a printing mistake, whoever's holding a chayenu. Okay, v'hizik, pasha. Now, im ein mishtam el v'chamishtam, you needed 5 people to hold on to the shore. Zesha pasha b'shmirasai, he and only he is chayiv, because the other 4 were there. You understand? He walked away. But if the animal doesn't need to have all of the 5, not only is the one that walked away chayiv, because the shriner is in the place of the owner, all of them are also chayavim. Now, they're not chayiv, it's not a knas. They're not chayiv, each one to pay the full damage. But whatever has to be paid will be divided by all. Halacha ches. The borrower presumed the animal is a tam. The nimtzat came out that he wasn't. It's like by a shidduch, you find out later. Oh my God, amud. I'm talking about what the woman says of the husband, not the God forbid the other way around. Im yada hashoyel shuhu nakhan. In other words, he didn't know. Interesting nuance. He didn't know he's a muad. He didn't know he's a muad, but he knew enough that this shirt can be in a haba'olim mishalmin chatzi nezek. Shekol makom shuhu oilech harei shem ba'olav olav shem ba'olav olav. So here, since he didn't know, Danny, that he's a muad, it's very interesting halacha. The animal was a muad. Listen to what's going on over here. Now, the shoyel at least knew that he's a nakhan. Didn't know that he's a muad. The shoyel won't have to pay. You have to chap what's going on over here. But on the other hand, the ba'alim don't pay nezek shalom. Go wrap your head around that. No one. No one. No. Oh yeah. And the shoyel pays chatzi nezek. Very good, because he knew, because you are in the place of the owner. The fact is, the animal was a muad. He says, I didn't know that. Okay, so pay chatzi nezek. Shafilo hayatam kishalom bedatoi chatzi nezek oyim mishalom. Sharei yoda shul nakhan. Now the im lo yoda hashoyel shul nakhan. We're making we're splitting it here in a tam. Ein hashoyel chayiv klum. In other words, the shoyel, he's in the place of the owner because he's makabel. He never knew, and the ba'alim have to pay nezek shalom. It's amazing.
In both cases, because it's a short wood, there has to be full damages paid.
It's amazing. If the animal,
does the owner pay the whole thing?
Yeah. Half and half. What's if the animal would have no knowledge, no knowledge? Think about it. And now the borrower, the animal then does goring, then the shoyel has to pay chatzi nezek, like the owner. It's amazing. Since he was misinformed, he's less responsible. Halacha 9, she'alok shutam, and the animal became a muad base hashoyel. We spoke about this in the intro. I remember that I was speaking about this. This didn't. No, it's how by Yaakov stay Ephraim. It's even by Doimim. There's a kima that the animal is affected by the owner or by the person that halachically then is the owner. So it became a muad under the borrower. Once he gives back the animal to the lender, halachically chazal litamusai. When you see an animal doing what an animal does, you know who you're looking at? You're looking at the owner. When you're looking at a child misbehave, who are you looking at? The parent. Oigevalt. Huh?
That one was there.
Choyel. Oh, why? Because choyel v'nishtana reshusay batla ha'ha'oda ha'ba'ala mishalom chatzi nezek. Hashoyel pativ, because he gave it back. You know, it's that you can even think that maybe the owner can tell the victim, when I had the animal, B'chlal was a tzaddik. Who gave it a teva to be a mazik? The mazik borrower.
Blame the school.
So I'm going to blame the borrower, even though once it's back under your domain. Very good word, Danny. In other words, I want to tell you a fact. Children behave in the school one way and they behave home another way. Because that's why you speak is gavaldik. So if they are muadim in the school, they can be, or the opposite way around. Some kindalach are takatimimim when they are in trinchatimimim. The moment they go back home, they become the chayis again. Beautiful. Halachava. Shoymen shekibel all of shmiras haguf habema bilvad. He says befedish, I'm going to guard the animal itself. Right, when you rent insurance today with the car, there's different levels of insurance. So, right, you're paying $14.99 a day on the internet. Then when you get them, you rent it, you pay $800 a day because of this insurance and that insurance, and don't ask about the taxes. But I am not undertaking the zika, guys. If that was the agreement, the guardian, even a shaykhid, even a shayel is only b'makim haba'olam stam. If you made a different agreement, patur mishala, and the ba'olam are chayavim l'shalom. The opposite. If only kibul shmiras nizakel, the shloimer only took, I'm going to pay for what it did. That's another insurance by cars. That happens very often. Oh, I don't care about my car. I just want to be covered for the damage it does to others. The zika, then chayiv hashloimer, because he took that responsibility. But the im huska, if the animal got damaged, pater. Now hold on. Pater doesn't mean that the balam won't get paid, but then the balam will have to go schwitz with the mazik. Halacha yudalet masar hashloimer. If I didn't mention this pedic has 14 halachas, Masar Hashem l'shomer acher. Another thing, I gave it over to Reuven. Reuven is my shon. Reuven gave it to Shimon. Guys, Hashomer Harishon Chayv l'Shalom l'Nizak. You get what's going on over here? Shehashomer shemasar, that act itself, without the knowledge of the owners, makes you chayiv. And you know what? Yakir, chayiv afilu ba'oinus. Chayiv afilu ba'oinus. And I get to say that of the Rambam here. It's now that we say that the teva of the shomer affects the animal, I gave it over to you. You gave it to someone else. That in itself is negligence. Shalom li. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to get your money back. But what's the exception? If the shomer gives it over to his benoi, or to someone in his household, or to his helper, then nichnasu tachas hashomer, and they are responsible because you knew right away that you're going to give it over to people in your household. Halacha yud beis, you have to move a bit quicker, but push it. Kol shomer shenis chayv l'shalem ve'ein loy. That's the best claim in a din Torah, in a beis din chanish. V'hoya mazik tam. Which anyways, from Mishalom Chatzin Ezek Megufay, you get it? When I say I don't have money, where did they take payment from? They take payment from the animal. Dovi, you get it? If I have I'm the shomer, and it did damage, Chatzin Ezek Megufay. I'm saying I have no cash. So where do you normally take payment from? The animal doesn't belong to me. The animal belongs to the owner. What do you do over it? The shomer is chayiv. But what do you do now? Hadei anizok mishtalim in a behema sheizika. Yeah, the guy that got damaged will collect it from the animal. And v'yishor demei mashin gova hanizak choyv ala shomer lebala behema. And no, it's when you give over your animal to be guarded by someone else, you know that. Halacha Yud Gimel, a new part, a new detail. Kol behema shezika peres mechubarim. Final the cheshbon. Rabbi Chaim came for the math over here, but this is a math that it's easy to chap. We spoke this out in the intro. So my animal, let's say, ate up your produce when it's not yet finished. How do you put a number on it? Misharin mashi zika b'shishin. The Rambam will explain what he means. Umeshalom zeshin eschayv l'shalom. Whether it's the ba'olam or whether it's the shreimrim, you take the area that got damaged. You make believe as if there is an area 60 times as large. And then you make a contrast. The Rambam will say how much was the field worth when it was full with developing produce. And now that this field has that area less, Now we know how much, let's say, saw ready produce in the market is worth $100. It's not on the market. It didn't even finish growing, but without effort, it would have finished. So what you do is you make believe as if this field had in it shishim beisof. And if I were to sell the field right now, how much is it worth with all of this? First of all, the land has value, but also the fact that it already has produce in development gives it added value. How much would it be sold if it would have been filled? And now appreciate something. If you wouldn't make in 60, then the number would be much greater. How much is the field worth with produce? How much is it worth without any produce? The difference would be greater. The moment you start adding imaginary produce, so the buyer is anyways getting a lot, he's just not getting a 60th, it's less significant. Now, it's still significant. If it would have been within 100, within 1,000, it would have been even less significant. Chazal said inside 60. And that difference is you have to pay. And even one kalach, the rule is always that's the cheshbon that you make. Now, all of the above is because, like we mentioned, the produce is not yet ready. So that's why would you pay the full value? Not only do you have to harvest it, it's not even developed. But the final halacha, now they're still connected to the ground. Gemurim means that you can harvest it now. It doesn't need to be in the ground. Now it's already considered like it's harvested. Nishalim demei paid is gemurim b'shaveyim. So demei so saim demei so saim. Hareisha achla peidois dekel echad. It ate up the fruit of one palm. And va'acholon. So im hoyo dekel roimi v'chayoytze boy. What's dekel roimi she'ein hatomarim shelo yafais? Here we also get to make this cheshbon of mishan and oisam b'shishon al gaba karka. Here we go into, when it comes to fruit, not to produce, every type of fruit is different. If it's a dekel parsi, a Persian dekel, what's the chiddush of the Persian dekolim? That they have very good quality tamarim. It's very expensive. Then you don't get to get away with bashishin. No. And that's the money you have to pay. Beautiful. And today's final chapter, Pei to K, is a shorter chapter. Baruch Hashem, at the time will be perfect. We already went through 4 parakim of laws of Niskei Mamon. I have a very simple question. If you see that some of my property is about to damage your property, and you come to me and you tell me, stop. And I tell you, no, I know the dinim. If this happens, I'm going to pay. And I'm taka going to pay. Doesn't give me the right not to protect the animals. In other words, nizikin means that if I was mazik you, bo'ofen that the Torah says I'm chayiv to pay, I'm chayiv to pay. But I have to do everything that I could to prevent it from happening. That's a very big thing. And we're going to see in a moment that the potentially victim can take steps to stop it from happening, even if those steps ruin mine. Because when you see that I'm not doing my part, it's not enough for me to say, ich will sollen, even though I will. No. I'm not allowed to, I cannot allow my mammon to be mazik. That's going to be a big halacha. Now, the Rambam is going to tell us in this chapter, very important, Ezra HaSofer made 10 takonis, not to confuse it. There's also 10 tenoim that Yeshua. Ezra, let's take that out. Yeshua made 10 tenoim. Yeshua was the one through whom God allowed us to conquer the Holy Land. So Yeshua Beis Dino, he said that even though land, we believe in private ownership, there's a certain amount of collective ownership that we have for 10 items, in which one can derive benefit from the other, even though there is a little damage for the other, but it makes society function a lot well. And in that ruach, Shlomo HaMelech added another one. So you have the 10 of Yeshua, the one of Shlomo, all of that will be in Perek Chamishi, Perek K. The 5th chapter has 10 halachas. Let's dive in. Halacha. And everyone knows my behema is kriechen everywhere. Even though my animal didn't do damage, Masrin de volel shloisha ba'am. You tell the owner, listen here, your animal is entering our property. I'm saying, relax. My animal won't damage. And if it will damage, I'm going to pay. I was warned 3 times, even though my animal so far never damaged once. I have the right to say, I don't want your cat in my backyard. Yes, I love this. And then, listen, Bo, love it. Beautiful. Now, lefikach, we're all getting into this takana. You may not raise. Now, guys, there's a big difference between having one animal tied to your bed versus having animals and you're making out of them a herd and you have to pasture them in an area where there are fields and kramim. In an area where you have forests, it's not a problem. Why? Because of what we learned in the beginning of Perek. I have to have a lifestyle in which things the way they are, my property won't damage. And I can't say, if they'll damage, I'll pay. Owning herds of behemadakas or pasturing them, they krich everywhere and they will end up damaging. So I can't lachatchila own that. Ella, I can only be megadol behemadaka by Yorim, by Midbarish, Eretz Yisrael is important. Now, this is, first of all, this has to do with Yishuv Eretz Yisrael also. So they didn't make this takana everywhere, even though we'll see later people extended it. But this is specifically for Eretz Yisrael. So you ask, you're kidding, all the karbanis were made out of shepselach and goats. Yeah, because they were raised in certain locations in the Holy Land where in that vicinity there were in Sadis and Karam. Now, of course, the Surya, anyway, if they did damage, the owner has to pay. Number one, that you are allowed to pasture as small animals in forests that belong private ownership if the trees are thick. So that's another important detail. When I mentioned before that Takanas Chachamim was b'mekayim hasadis v'hakramim, but you can't make a blanket statement b'mekayim hayoros. You're good to go. It depends what type of forest. Second, base. I can collect wood, guys. Collecting wood, not harvesting wood. Collecting wood, meaning, guys, a few steps. Pchusim means they're worth very little. And they're almost thorn-like, like Hizmei and Higei. And, I'm sorry, they are still lachem and mechubarim. Why is that? Because most people, I know that, guys, wood is fuel. We get that. But it takes effort to cut, to harvest these little thorn bushes. And when they're moist, even when you harvest them, you can't put them in your fireplace now. So the effort is a lot. The benefit is very little. For the benefit of society, one person can take off the other's fields, but taking it off doesn't mean completely uprooting it. It only means taking it and that it's going to regenerate. And that's only on types of woods like Hizmei and Higei, brambles, prickly shrubs. You have to have pictures. But Tanai number 3, that when grass grows, grass means not only in the public, it means in your sada. Grass can be taken. So now I just want to go back in a second. So when behema daka, you cannot raise it amongst sadais and karamim. That's because people don't use their sadais just to have green grass. No, you plant produce. That will be damaged by that. Grass has very little value. 4. I can cut a branch off, not like in two. In 2 was I can mamish shaloy yesharish, but I'm cutting off basically the whole bush. It's just going to regenerate. A branch I can cut. What type of branch, guys? This is because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. People would cut off these branches not to burn them. No one would do that. They would replant them. One of the best fundraisers, Keren Kayemet Yisrael. They're planting trees. Chutz, because if I have an old olive tree, I know that you can make from my branch, you can make it into a new tree, but it's going to have so little olives from my tree. So you're going to take off that branch, it's going to completely ruin its value. Only the length of an egg from the places from where the branches begin to spread. I'm reading that translation into English and go, you do your yegia, there's different ways of teaching it. In other words, there's a limit of how much I can take, which my gain or the gain of the Holy Land is so much more than your loss. Your Yeshua says you have to do that. Only again, because it limits the loss and the added benefit of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And never michudayin. Also the moment then you can never, because why should I give up my branch? Because eventually when my tree will have paytas, the sun, right? The sun adds a lot. If it's never going to see the sun, even later it's going to be inferior. People that cut those branches, they were going to be mavrachit. They're going to replant it. So he says it's better for Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Next, hey. Who owns a mayan? That's a good kasha. The mayan, the spring, it came out of my property. In other words, guys, there is the public city, there's private city. If I have Yakir, a mayan leaving my private property, my sada, of course I can benefit from it. But those waters belong to the Bnei Ha'ir. Not to the Kol Bnei Yisrael, not even to Bnei Shifta, but the Ir has to have some benefit. Not, it came out of my property, it's all mine. But others cannot take. The sixth night.
So it belongs to the whole Bnei Ha'ir.
They can't come into my field, but the water goes out of it. Walking into my field is a whole different. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about it. Think about a spring. A spring keeps on flowing. If I have the good fortune, Batchila means right. Oh, mitamol. A new open water is coming out. Who owns it? The city. Imagine what people, if it would be otherwise. It's not like oil. I know oil is different here in Los Angeles. Because here I have to make avoid. Here the water is coming by itself. It's a gift that God gave to Bnei. Now, 6. Just the guys, just for the record. Yam Tevera is Bechelka Shel Naftali. All of the Yidden, not only Shevad of Naftali, can go fishing in the Yam Shel Teveri. But what type of net? Only a small net. Why? Because the big nets, they interrupt. If I put out a big net, then ships cannot go there. I don't have the right to interrupt your makayim of sailing. A kela that will stop us, a net that will stop ships. But who can do that? If I belong to Naphtali, I can even put out a big net. Your boat cannot go through that area. I can tell you, hello, it's an hour chelik. Go around my net. Hello, Zayn. You have to relieve yourself. I can go behind any fence and relieve myself, even if it happens to be that the field over here is growing karkoim. Karkoim has a very, very expensive because it has a very good odor. And more than that, I can pick up the pebbles from that area to use as toilet paper anywhere I want. If a person is lost in a vineyard, now guys, just imagine that. A vineyard, if you ever went into a vineyard, it's very low. Well, they grow on the ground, but you make these trellises. It can be so packed that when you're in it, you don't know ben yamina, ben smoiloi. You can cut your way out. When you're cutting your way out, you're damaging. If you're trapped inside such a field, that misafeg va'oila mefaseg. I'm sorry. Mefaseg va'oila mefaseg b'yoyed. Break through them. Minimize your damage, guys. But you don't tell the person, "No, be careful and go here, go there." No, you'll get. Number 9, whenever there's a lot of mud, whenever the ravens are filled with water, then they are allowed, even if the tzadidim belong already. I can walk on the edges of your property, not to have to walk through mud, through puddles. And the final 10, that if a person is found deceased on the ground, we don't know who his or her relatives are, then if you are not within a city, you bury them right there. Dying is very expensive. Go buy a plot. That person was Zoicha, the last mazel. He won the lottery. But if he's mamish on Mitzvah means, guys, right across the path in a way that if he'll be buried where he is found, everyone walking over that road will become Tamei Tumas Oil Mace. We don't want that. Then we can move him. Or not only inside a city, because every city had a Beis HaChaim. Go take him to a Beis HaChaim for free, but bury him there. Even if he's within the Tchum Shabbos, that's already called in the city. The moment you cannot bury him, mamish over there, once you move, then move him to the closest Beis HaKvaros. And who's going to pay for that plot? Chabad. And someone is going to pay. Someone will pay for it. Allah Chadal. Now, that's the 10 of Yeshua Beis Dinah. Now, the same concept came along. When there's no damage, when people walk in my field, because everything was harvested, they can walk lahalech b'shvilin. They can walk through private paths up until the second rains. Remember Masech B'Tainis, there's a whole machloikas tanoim. When is the second rains? From the second rains on, people plan then, even on my paths. If people will be allowed to walk through the paths in my field, they might end up stepping on the place where I planted, and they're going to ruin the produce. But if not during that time until I harvest, it's almost like it's a public service. You have private paths, everyone can walk there. Now the Rambam Zog, you should know I know that you can say Yeshua conquered the land. He had the power to make. Once he made those takanas, that's important for a society. There's a certain amount of public use of my private land for the benefit of all. Halacha Mishiyedet hatal bebavel. Asur lahalich b'shvilin sheyesh lahem ba'alim. Amazing. Now, guys, tal loy ma'atzar, the Gemara says. So that means that in Eretz Yisrael, unless you are by the Revia Shniya, Shlomo Melech says, you can walk on if I have a path. In Bavel, even during any time of the year, when the dew falls, mistam until when it evaporates, at that time, if people walk on that, they're going to take away the benefit of the tal. Mashma that in Eretz Yisrael, the tal is even more blessed. So it's not going to be, the effect of the tal won't be ruined by people walking. Halacha zay. But I'm going Yantav. Yantav, guys, we learned Oyla Sre'iya, Shalmei Chagiga, the kidding. So I know that the people that do this for a living, they're going to raise them out there in the forest. But I'm buying it. I don't want to have the last second to buy an animal. So what should I do? So I'm allowed to keep it 30 days. Or if I'm doing a wedding and I need to have 15 sheep, because you have to invite the whole city and you have to outdo the other guy. So what do? Then you can buy them and keep them for 30 days. Another thing, the tabach, lekeach v'shoichet. Lekeach umasha at she'yishchet ma'at ma'at. In other words, you don't say that the guy has to shecht all of them. You give them a certain amount of time to slowly go through them. What you cannot do is allow them to pasture. Extending, guys, Pedek, hey, the Asur Legadol Behemadaka. Remember, we learned the Surya, yeah. It's not like an halacha hey over here, B'chol Makim. It's not B'chol Makim. Nevertheless, they added Bavel. Surya, Mutan, Bavel, no. Keretz Yisrael, Esel, Lesor, Bug, Gedula Behemadaka, V'chai V'daka. And halacha 9, people are not going to like this, but that's the way it is. Cannot raise a dog. Now, guys, we're not speaking about a dog for protection. To make a dog for protection, you can put on a chain.
For companionship.
I remember this in the Gemara. Here we don't even say kelev ra here. Asur chachamim legadol kelev elim kain kosher b'shal shelas. Today for this on YouTube they're gonna cut us off YouTube. I'll just read it to Lashon HaKodesh. This is like the biggest aveda now. Aval megadol kelavim be'ira smucha l'sfar. And you're living in a dangerous place. Today, Baruch Hashem, all the cities are dangerous. So you can, but by Yom Koishroi, Balayla Matiroi, Omru Chachamim Osur Megadol Klavim Vechazedim. Why Mepnesha Zekamaruba O Matsoi? And the final halacha Yud. This is beautiful. A guy is a roya. He's raising the Hemadaka, the Eretz Yisrael, and he wants to do tshuva. So what do we want from him? To sell everything today, he'll lose money. So a roy that's doing tshuva, you give the guy breathing. Because the father didn't know this halacha. I just want to conclude that I remember that in Brazil, many years ago, I'm going back in the 70s, even there was the black market, certain businesses that were not 100% kosher, but people had those businesses. Came a point where people were trying to shape up. Someone walked by the Rebbe in Machne Yisrael and spoke to the Rebbe that he has many businesses that are on the black market. What should he do? So the Rebbe told him, slowly get into businesses that are kosher. In other words, you can say, no, it's not legal, but you're doing tshuva. You can't tell a person, you want to do tshuva, everything you're doing is taka not kosher, cold turkey, sell it, he won't do tshuva. You can sell it right away. And,